Imagine this nightmare hitting you square in the face at 11 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday. Your doorbell explodes with pounding, you open up to find your neighbor's husband, decked out in his full deputy uniform, badge gleaming under the porch light, barking like it's an arrest. Pool keys. Now. Behind him stands Denise Hargrove, the HOA queen bee herself, arms crossed, flashing that plastic smile she reserves for community meetings. "We've given you 3 warnings, Ryan," she coos in that sugary voice that could rot teeth. "The pool is a shared resource. Time to hand it over." I stared at them both, the weight of my grandfather's legacy pool rippling softly in the background. This wasn't about water safety or rules. It was about control. And little did they know, I'd been watching their game for weeks, stacking evidence like poker chips before the big bluff. My name's Ryan Hale. I moved back to Willow Creek Estates last spring after Grandpa passed. The house had been in our family since the 70s, built stone by stone, including that pool out back fed by a natural spring he tapped himself. No contractors, no shortcuts, just sweat, stubborn pride, and a promise he drilled into me. Never let anyone claim what you built with your own hands. I came home to restore it, not to fight. But 6 weeks after the welcome barbecue, Denise showed up like a real estate angel of death, clipboard in hand, blazer starched even in July heat. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she trilled, shoving a glossy pamphlet titled Harmony Guidelines at my chest. I smiled politely. She smiled wider like she just handed me a leash. The first notice arrived 2 days later, bright yellow taped to my gate. Unapproved water structure detected. Requires immediate inspection and key surrender for community access. I laughed it off. Grandpa's pool had been here decades before Willow Creek even had an HOA. Then the fines started, $50 here, $100 there, for non-compliant landscaping and unauthorized water usage. Denise loved sending them. She'd stroll by in her golf cart, waving like we were old friends while her husband, Lieutenant Greg Hargrove, parked his cruiser just close enough for the headlights to hit my mailbox every other night. "No ticket. Just a reminder. We're watching," the light said. I kept my mouth shut. That's the first thing they don't teach you in HOA wars. Silence is ammunition. While Denise preached community harmony at every meeting, her voice dripping with concern for property values, I started logging everything. Dates. Photos. Drone footage of her little spy gadgets hovering over my fence. The neighbors whispered about her. One guy down the street sold his house after she fined him for leaving a garden hose out overnight. Another family got written up because their kids' birthday balloons were the wrong shade of HO-approved beige. Yeah, they actually had a color chart. Black humor at its finest. Nothing screams freedom like measuring your grass to the millimeter while the queen steals your water rights. Denise didn't just enforce rules. She invented them on the fly. At the next board meeting she stood at the podium, binder thicker than a phone book, and announced, "Mr. Hale's pool draws from community resources. We must protect our shared assets." I sat in the back row sipping lukewarm coffee and watched the room nod like bobbleheads. Her husband stood by the door in uniform, arms folded, staring straight at me. The message was clear. Play nice or the badge comes knocking again. But under my calm exterior I was smiling. Because while she thought this was about pool keys, I was already digging into the real dirt. Those community maintenance line items in the HOA financials? Thousands missing. No receipts. Just her signature and Greg's approval stamp. Cute. The harassment ramped up slow, the way a noose tightens when you're not looking. Drones buzzing at dusk. Anonymous complaints about excessive splashing after dark. One letter even accused me of running an illegal swim club because my cousin visited twice in 1 month. Denise hand-delivered the latest notice herself, standing at my gate in pearls and a sun visor, smiling like a shark in lipstick. "Rules are rules, Ryan. Pay the $2,000 fine or we escalate." I leaned on the fence, voice even. "Whose rules, Denise?" "The ones you wrote after Grandpa's pool was already here." She laughed that fake little laugh. "The community's rules, dear. We all have to sacrifice for harmony." Sacrifice. Right. Because nothing says sacrifice like demanding my grandfather's legacy while skimming the pool fund for her executive retreats. I didn't argue. I documented. Every drone pass got timestamped. Every cruiser visit logged against Greg's official shift schedule. Half the time he wasn't even on duty. I bought a cheap pen recorder, slipped it in my shirt pocket every time I stepped outside. When Greg showed up again demanding keys for safety inspection, I let him talk, smiled, and closed the gate. Click. Evidence. The neighbors saw me staying quiet and figured I was weak. Denise figured I was broken. Perfect. Let them think that. While she paraded around in her golf cart like the mayor of Stepford, I was cross-referencing county plats and federal watershed maps. Grandpa's spring wasn't just private. It sat on a protected federal easement from 1979. No HOA, no local board. No Denise Hargrove had jurisdiction. She was about to learn that the hard way. The escalation felt like death by 1,000 yellow notices. One morning I woke to find my trash cans tipped over and a fresh violation sticker on my truck. Unauthorized commercial vehicle on premises. My work truck. With my name on the door. Denise's handwriting. I almost laughed out loud. Black humor gold. The woman who preached community standards was now littering my driveway like a teenager pulling pranks. I added it to the folder anyway. Photos, timestamps, everything. The neighbors started avoiding eye contact at the mailbox. One lady whispered, "She's got the whole board scared. Just pay it and move on." I smiled and kept walking. Fear was her currency. I was investing in something better, proof. Then came the financial bombshell. HOA reports are public if you actually read them. Most people don't. I did. Page after page of pool maintenance, expenses with 0 contractor names. Just checks signed by Lieutenant Greg Hargrove and deposited into accounts that traced back to a shell company called Creekside Harmony Services. Denise's vacation photos from last year? Posted right after those checks cleared. Coincidence? Sure. And the insurance policy they charged every homeowner for? Expired 5 years ago. Residents were paying for coverage that didn't exist while Denise pocketed the difference. I sat at my kitchen table at 2 a.m., pool lights reflecting off the documents, and whispered to the empty room, "You messed with the wrong auditor, Denise." Grandpa would have poured himself a beer and toasted. I wasn't alone anymore. The treasurer, Linda, had been looking haunted for months. We met in my garage after dark. She slid a flash drive across the workbench. Every fake invoice since she took over. She calls it creative budgeting. Linda's voice cracked with that bitter laugh people get when they realize they've been robbed by someone who smiles at church. I added it all. Drone videos of Greg parked off duty, timestamps of Denise's golf cart doing inspections at midnight, the doctored boundary map she'd drawn herself to claim Grandpa's spring. The pattern was beautiful in its stupidity, classic small-time grift dressed up in pastel blazers and for the children's speeches. Denise felt the heat. Suddenly the flyer started. Non-compliant resident alert, with my photo printed in bold. Dangerous property owner. She even slipped anonymous notes in my mailbox. Sell before the fines triple. Printed on official HOA stationery. Lazy. When Greg showed up again, this time in civilian clothes trying the friendly neighbor act, I just held up my phone and hit record. Evening, Lieutenant. Nice night for off-duty community service. His face went the color of old concrete. He left without another word. Denise drove by slow in her cart, eyes locked on my house like she could will it to burn down with sheer entitlement. I waved. She didn't wave back. For the first time, that perfect smile cracked. The neighborhood started to crack too. Quiet conversations at the mailbox. Folded notes slipped under my door. Stay strong. One old guy who'd lived here 30 years stopped me while walking his dog. She wrote me up for Christmas lights being too bright in 2019. I've been scared to speak since. He shook his head. You're the first one who didn't fold. I didn't tell him I wasn't folding, I was folding her. Every night I added another layer to the binder. I labeled HOA fraud, active case. Signatures matched. Timestamps lined up. Federal code violations stared back at me in black and white. Using a sworn officer's authority for private HOA enforcement? Wire fraud? Misappropriation of funds? The spring on federal land? Denise had built herself a beautiful house of cards on my grandfather's water. I just lit the match. She called the emergency meeting for Saturday night. Mandatory attendance, the email screamed. Ongoing threats to neighborhood harmony. Translation: public execution. I printed my own folder, slipped the pen recorder in my pocket, and walked to the clubhouse under the same moonlight that used to glint off Greg's cruiser. The room smelled like cheap coffee and panic. Denise stood at the front like a game show host, binder open, Greg beside her still wearing the holster even though he wasn't on duty. "We have received multiple complaints," she began, voice syrupy. "Mr. Hale refuses to comply. For the safety of our children." I sat in the front row and let her talk. Let her dig. Every word she said was another nail. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some filmed on their phones. Denise smiled wider, sensing victory. As acting enforcement liaison, Lieutenant Hargrove will now collect the pool keys. Greg stepped forward, hand out. The room held its breath. That was the moment the engines rumbled outside. Low. Official. Blue lights painted the windows. Denise's smile froze mid-sentence. "What on earth?" The doors opened. Two federal agents in plain suits walked in calm as Sunday morning badges out. Behind them came the guy I'd quietly contacted weeks ago, Miller from Environmental Crimes. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Mrs. Hargrove, we have a federal warrant for all HOA financial records and operational documents related to jurisdictional fraud and misappropriation." Denise blinked like someone had slapped her with her own clipboard. Greg's hand twitched toward his holster. Instantly, two agents moved. Lieutenant stepped back. "You are not acting in any official capacity here." The badge that had terrified the neighborhood for years suddenly looked cheap under fluorescent lights. Denise's voice cracked like cheap porcelain. "This is absurd. We're just a homeowners association protecting property values." Miller didn't even look up from the warrant. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for wire fraud, embezzlement of community funds, and interference with a federally protected watershed. Sit down." The room erupted in whispers. Phones came out. One neighbor actually gasped. "About damn time." Denise pointed a shaking finger at me. "He set this up. He's been harassing us for months." Miller finally glanced at her, calm as ever. "We have your signatures on 12 falsified invoices, 3 shell companies, and an expired insurance policy you charged residents for. You harassed yourself, Mrs. Hargrove." Greg wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The uniform that once screamed authority now just looked like expensive cosplay. I stayed quiet, leaning against the back wall while agents photographed documents and boxed up files. Linda was escorted out to give her statement. She actually smiled at me on the way past, lighter than I'd seen her in years. Denise kept talking, voice rising into that desperate register entitled people get when the world stops bowing. "You don't understand. I was protecting the community." Miller's reply was gentle but final. "By stealing from it." The silence that followed was sweeter than any pool party. Years of her little kingdom, grass-length edicts, color-coded holiday decorations, midnight drone patrols, evaporated in under 10 minutes. Greg was led out first, hands behind his back, no cuffs but the message clear. Denise followed, still sputtering about misunderstandings and harassment, pearls bouncing with every frantic step. The blue lights outside painted the whole scene like a bad cop show nobody asked for. When the last federal SUV pulled away, the clubhouse emptied slow. Neighbors walked past me with nods, half apologies, half thanks. One woman I'd never spoken to squeezed my arm. I was scared to say anything. "Thank you." The old guy with the dog just shook my hand and whispered, "You ended the reign of terror." I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a guy who finally got his grandfather's pool back. Outside, the night air smelled like fresh-cut grass and freedom. I walked home, pool lights still glowing soft and steady. The same water Grandpa mixed concrete for in a wheelbarrow. The same spring the feds now confirmed no HOA could touch. Denise's cease and desist letters were already evidence tags. Her harmony rules were about to be rewritten by people who actually read the Constitution. 3 weeks later the dust settled. Denise faced federal charges. Greg got suspended pending review. The entire HOA board resigned the same day. At the final emergency meeting, the residents voted unanimously to dissolve the association. No more fines for balloon colors. No more measuring grass like it owed us money. The first bylaw they struck was the one Denise wrote herself. All water features subject to community oversight. Poetic. The county cleared my property records. The fines vanished. I hired a crew to patch the tiles Grandpa laid, reseal the edges, and let the spring run free again. Watching that water fill up felt like time healing itself. Linda dropped by one morning with the final paperwork. She looked 10 years younger. Feels weird not checking my email for violation notices. We laughed, the kind of laugh that comes after surviving a war nobody declared. She handed me a manila folder. The neighborhood had voted to rename the spring in Grandpa's honor. I built a small wooden sign that weekend. Nothing flashy, just carved letters sealed against the weather. Hail Spring Preserve. Planted a sunflower at the base because Grandma always said they remember where the sun rises. Sometimes I catch neighbors slowing down at the fence, kids pointing at the pool like it's a landmark now. No more whispers. No more fear. Just the sound of laughter and splashing replacing the click of Denise's clipboard. I sit on the porch most evenings, coffee in hand, listening to the pump hum like breathing. The fight's over. The noise is gone. And the peace. It tastes earned. Every once in a while, I wonder what Denise tells herself in whatever house she's hiding in now. Probably still believes she was the hero protecting property values. People like her always rewrite the story so they stay the victim. But the truth is simpler. She tried to own something that was never hers to control. Freedom doesn't come with a clipboard. And power doesn't last when the paperwork turns against you. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. Drop it in the comments. Was Denise really just protecting the neighborhood? Or was she always just a power-hungry bully who finally met the one guy who wouldn't bow? Who was really in the wrong here? The homeowner who stood his ground? Or the HOA Karen who thought the rules only applied to everyone else? Tell me where you're watching from right now. I read every single comment. And if you've got your own HOA horror story, drop it below. Let's compare scars.